All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to RCT Creations and the Fun Corporation series. It's been a little while since the last update to the series, but today we'll be looking over the decade of the 1980s at the Fun Corporation parks. Now, the 1980s saw many major additions to both Funland and Joyland, but also did see the first removals in the company's history. Let's go ahead and get started by jumping over into the finances. Now here is the finance sheet for the 1980s. The decade began strong with the Fun Corporation's profit growing from $2.7 million to $5.2 million by 1983. Through the mid-80s, profit fell to its lowest in 1986. After 1987, pricing at the parks was updated with increases in ticket prices, as well as adjustment to food and merchandise pricing partway through the 1987 season at Funland and prior to the 1988 season at Joyland. Following these pricing updates, the profit at the parks increased significantly, leading to a record profit of $6.2 million in 1988, with a major boost from Funland alone, and a strong profit of $5.2 million chain-wide in 1989. Due to extra staffing added at Joyland and recent additions, starting cash amount will be increased by $250,000 heading into the 1990s, leading to a decrease in the total amount of money deposited into the bank at the end of the 1989 season, just in case you're a little curious why there's a bit of a difference for the last year of the 1980s. Our total stored cash currently sits at $72,770,983.90 heading into the 1990s. Now, moving on into our additions by year for the Fun Corporation, we will go back to the 1980 season. And in 1980, Funland would add a Widow's Web, a Huss enterprise, in Minetown. With most visitors located near the main midway or downtown section of the park, this ride was looking to bring more foot traffic down to the Minetown section of Funland. Now, also in 1980 at Sister Park Joyland, Laser Looper, a Schwarzkopf double looping roller coaster, the first roller coaster in the chain to feature a vertical loop, would be added. Laser Looper would be the second major thrill coaster at Joyland, following the park's original White Cyclone, which opened in 1971 and would be the counterpart to Corkscrew at Funland. 1981 would see us stay solely at Joyland, adding Shooting Star, another Huss enterprise. This would be located next to Laser Looper and begin to fill in the newer area and bring more visitors to the western edge of the park. 1982 would see the addition of Ring of Fire, a Schwarzkopf shuttle loop roller coaster. This would be the first launching roller coaster in the Fun Corporation chain, and the first roller coaster at Funland to feature a vertical loop. The ride's signature element stands tall over the path down leading to Minetown, giving guests heading that direction a very good view, staring straight up at the vertical loop as trains are launched forwards and backwards 360 degrees. Now, 1983 would see no new additions across the chain. It would give the parks time to digest previous additions and the upcoming future additions. To make room for expansion, however, the original kids area at Joyland would need to be demolished to make room for a new attraction. The Joyland Carousel would be relocated to Minetown and renamed to Wagon Wheel. Ivory Tower 2 and Minimania would be moved over to the Food Court Plaza near the Joyland Cinema, and both rides would be renamed to Spiral Tower and Great Chase respectively. Unfortunately, at the end of the 1983 season, Ivory Tower 1 and the Wildcat roller coaster would give their final rides. Both rides would be scrapped, making them the first two rides to be completely removed under the Fun Corporation. Following the ride removals in 1983, both Funland and Joyland would once again receive similar additions for the 1984 season. At Funland in 1984, it would see the addition of the area of Terra Aqua. This area would feature the brand new Terra Aqua River and an Intamin River Rapids ride, with two separate lift hills to give a nice long ride through the unpredictable current of the river Terra Aqua. Now, Joyland would also receive an Intamin River Rapids ride, though not as themed in a brand new area. This one would be dubbed Whitewater Rapids and would give guests in the hot summer months a chance to cool off on the unpredictable Whitewater Rapids ride. 1985 would yet again see very similar additions across both the Fun Corporation parks. Funland would receive the twin excavator Rangers designed by Huss. Due to belief of popularity and year-round operations, 2 ranges were added to Funland in 1985 back-to-back, giving an excellent spectacle for guests watching, and to ensure at least one would be open while another would go through any yearly rehabilitation needed. Now, Joyland would only receive 1 Huss Ranger in 1985 as compared to its California counterpart. The ride would be dubbed the Ranger and would be located on the eastern end of the park near White Cyclone. In 1986, Funland would receive its next roller coaster. The Last Stand would be a Togo stand-up roller coaster added to a smaller themed Oriental section of Funland. It would be one of 2 stand-up roller coasters to open in California in 1986, the other being Shockwave at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The Last Stand was originally built for a small park in Japan, however construction costs would be too high for the small Japanese park, so the coaster was listed for sale much below what it would have costed brand new. Fun Corporation would pounce on the opportunity to purchase the quote-unquote one-of-a-kind coaster and would move it to California, unbeknownst that Magic Mountain would also be building a stand-up roller coaster. The ride would be a slightly smaller version of the standard Astro Comet layout seen at Kings Island and Canada's Wonderland, with a shortened turn towards the station following the trick track after the Helix. Due to the design being intended for another park, a steel lattice structure would be added underneath the ride so little support or land modification would be required for the installation. Now, Joyland would not be left behind in 1986, as they would receive the Magic Carpet, a Z-Era Magic Carpet ride. It would be added to boost the flat ride collection at Joyland and would be located directly across from where the Ranger currently stands. Looking to add more themed experiences after being inspired by a visit to Silver Dollar City, both Fun Corporation parks would receive new themed lands for the 1987 season. At Funland, this would be the town of Elkridge. This new area would offer plenty of shopping, food, and an all-new experience with the Elkridge Adventure Train. This new train ride would take guests on a journey across the shipping rail line just outside of Elkridge to pick up more supplies for the town. This ride would feature a show scene for loading the train where workers at the warehouse would warn guests of a potential train robbery that could take place on the unprotected rail line. Startled by this news, the conductor of the Elkridge Adventure Train would take guests on a journey through the long-abandoned Elkridge mine caverns to avoid any run-ins with train robbers. Also added to Funland in 1987 will be the Grove Coffee Shop, along the main path to Minetown from the main midway at the front of the park. This would be a great opportunity for any guest to have a seat and enjoy some AC and a cup of coffee if they so choose, on their long journey down to Minetown. Over in New York, Joyland would receive the Joyland Meadow themed area. This area would also feature plenty of shopping and food opportunities and add plenty of new landscaping and flowers to the park. With Joyland Meadow, a new Z-Era family coaster was added to anchor the new family land. The new coaster, dubbed Wing, would feature 3 trains of different creatures of flight, one themed to a butterfly, one themed to a hummingbird, and one themed to a ladybug. The coaster features 2 lift hills and offers spectacular views of the new area and existing rides in the park. To match its counterpart at Joyland, Funland would receive Route 70, a Z-Era Magic Carpet ride in 1988. The ride itself would be themed to a public transit bus, and 2 additional buildings would be added to bring more life to the downtown section of Funland. With this addition, the theming would be elevated as compared to its counterpart in New York, with theming being a new target of the Fun Corporation. In 1989, the last additions for the decade would only be seen at Joyland. Rock and Roller, a Huss breakdance, would open in July of 1989 after facing a few technical delays. This ride would be added to Joyland Meadow directly across from the entrance to the Wing roller coaster. Now to finish off the 1980s, let's go ahead and talk coasters starting at Funland. Cyclone still sits atop as the guest favorite, having given over 3,841,208 rides heading into the 1990. The trains are rotated around on a seasonal basis, with all 3 trains running from May to October, and only running 2 during the slower season, while the third goes through its annual rebuild. Carabel Mining Company currently sits at 2,237,504 riders at the end of 1989, with 3 train operation being phased out in 1986. While all 3 trains are still used, the third is always used as a spare during the peak season and rebuilt during the slower season. Mini Mania Funland's Kiddie Coaster currently has given 1,106,842 rides and has welcomed itself into the 1 Million Riders Club, and remains the only kiddie coaster at the park. It still holds as a popular family attraction through the 1980s. Remaining very popular, Wildcat currently sits at 709,330 riders. Due to its low capacity, it often boasts the longest line in the park during both the peak and slower part of the season. Funland's first looping coaster, Corkscrew, currently has 2,700,490 riders. While it only runs 2 trains, the ride still boasts a signature aero high capacity that tends to keep the wait time low even during the summer season. The launch Ring of Fire currently sits at 1,328,616 riders. The ride's location and unique for the time propulsion system lead to the ride still being popular amongst guests that visit Funland. Though it only runs 1 train, its short wait time and simple restraint still lead to solid throughput, although the ride could definitely use a repaint heading into the 1990s. Funland's newest coaster, Last Stand, currently sits at 502,060 riders heading into the 1990s. The ride's challenging restraint system leads to longer loading times compared to the other major coasters at Funland, and its queue is quite a trek to get to the boarding station. While praised when it opened, guests have complained about its location off the beaten path and that the ride feels out of place compared to how other rides fit into their locations. Moving on over to New York, and we'll start with the Joyland-owned White Cyclone. Sitting at 1,819,811 riders to end the 1989 season, White Cyclone still stands as the tallest coaster at Joyland. At the end of the 1984 season, 3 train operations on White Cyclone would come to an end. While all 3 trains still rotate, 1 train always remains as a spare or undergoing its annual rebuild. Hidden in the back of the park, Salem Lake Mine Train currently sits at 1,505,160 riders and remains fairly popular due to its family fun nature. The Great Chase, formerly known as Mini Mania, currently sits at 623,702 riders through the end of 1989. Much like its sister at Funland, the ride remains very popular amongst kids, even though it now sits in a new location within the park. Prior to the start of the 1983 season, it would be announced that Wildcat would be in its final year of operation, giving its final rides in September of the same year. Wildcat would be demolished following its closure in 1983, and all cars and parts would be shipped off to California to support its still operating twin. Unfortunately, all prior ridership data has been deleted, and I did not think to take a look at the ride's final numbers prior to demolishing it. Rest in peace as Wildcat. Joyland's double looping laser looper has given 792,820 rides as of the end of 1989. The ride anchors the west end of the park and typically has one of the longest lines within the park. Its smooth ride and double loops continue to draw guests in, and the typical debate among Joyland thrill seekers can be described as this: which ride is better, White Cyclone or Laser Looper? Wing, the newest addition to the Fun Corporation chain, has given 213,766 rides in its 3 seasons of operation. Since its opening, Wing is still the target of most of Joyland's advertising, and the coaster usually has the longest wait found in the park, even though it typically operates with all 3 of its trains. And that will wrap up the 1980s at the Fun Corporation. A big thank you to everyone that's made it this far. It's been a very busy summer, but I very much look forward to continuing this series and creating many more all-new creations within Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 and Open RCT 2. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to see all new RCT creations that go out, including an all-new addition to a Fun Corporation park in the 1990 season. Thank you very much. Have a good day, or have a good night, and thank you for stopping by.